Always a delight to have you on. I am Pius Kojo Baka. Straight to our very first story. The $300 million World Bank support will be advanced towards projects identified in the 2024 budget. Well, that's according to the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. He disclosed this on his social media handle after the World Bank announced the release of the funds to Ghana. The Finance Minister added that these funds will help in attaining the much-needed long-term sustainable growth. Now, according to the Finance Minister, this is the first time since 2017 that a group has advanced the facility. What's going to be the impact of this on the economy? Joining us via Zoom to explore that angle is Dr. Patrick Esuming. Thanks so much, sir, for joining me on Business Life, and good to see you. First off, we are informed that the second tranche of the $600 million will go into budget support, unlike the first one, which went into balance of payment. Really, what is going to be the impact of this on the economy?
Good evening to viewers. Thanks for having me. I think the most immediate impact is likely to be the currency. That is where you see, short-term impact of receiving those kind of foreign currency inflows. Then, depending on what you use the funds for, what you commit the funds to, you might see, longer-term impacts going through other sectors of the economy. Now, what the Finance Minister has said is that this is going to budgetary support. I think beyond what you use this money for, don't forget that before we could get the second tranche, we had to get to some agreement with the external creditors, the bilateral external creditors. And I think because of those negotiations, some of the projects have been put on hold. So you expect that once we conclude those ones, those projects will resume, and that should help with that. And then don't forget, we have a substantial shortfall in our budget. And we are not, under the IMF program, we can't take on any more commercial loans. We can't go and do Eurobonds. So in some sense, this is going to help plug the hole. So you shouldn't expect anything extraordinary except what has been put in the 2024 budget.
I see. So do you think that there are enough measures to track how these funds will be used to ensure value for money?
I'm not so sure. I think when you put money into budget support, then it just messed up in the pool. I don't think that these funds will be spent in a way that we are able to say we are using it to do A, B, and C. It's just coming into the pool. Now, in terms of whether we have enough for ensuring value for money, I don't think there's anything extraordinary about anything additional monitoring mechanisms on this to ensure that we are getting value for money. So the traditional system that we use for doing our spending, which many of us believe has a lot of laxities, will apply. So I don't think we shouldn't expect additional value for money because of these funds. Whatever we are doing with the IMF program, if there are any improvement in our governance system, that is the only way we begin to see that these funds are being put to more beneficial use.
Let's talk about the World Bank, because yesterday we got the information that it has approved some $300 million to government. Now, the question on the minds of many Ghanaians is, how do we ensure proper usage of the funds in an election year to avoid wastage?
Those are longer-term questions. They are very important questions to ask. I think we shouldn't only think of them in terms of funds received from the World Bank or the IMF. We should think broadly about how we improve our governance system so that, like your earlier question, we are getting higher value for whatever cedi we spend. So I think in the immediate term, so one part is Ghanaians being a little bit more vigilant and being demanding in terms of accountability of our political leaders. And then also making sure that the institutions that we set up are working. We have some of the finest institutions for keeping track of public spending, but we also know, regardless of that, every year when the Auditor General's reports are released, we all see the infractions that happen there. So if governance institutions, if civil society and the broader Ghanaian populace become more demanding and then more watchful about how public funds are spent for, maybe we might see impact. Because let's face it, we've had those institutions, we've had those laws all this while, and then we still see, public spending go, or the government spend out of its plan. So I think it will take a lot more Ghanaians be more vigilant and be more demanding that our government are accountable.
Dr. Sume, help me understand this. What's in your view on the next review by the IMF, looking at the fact that the debt restructuring with the external creditors have not been fully concluded?
So the next review, the first two disbursement has taught us that probably the fund is strategically timing the reviews to specific tasks it want the government to complete by way of the debt restructuring. So to get the program approved, we needed to get the financing assurances. To get the second one approved, the first review approved, we needed to get the agreement with the creditors. You get a sense that it might have something to do with maybe making some progress with the commercial creditors. You never know, because if you look at the timings, we are talking about April or probably May, and those are the early projections of where we should begin to make progress. In any case, I think those ones are a little optimistic. I don't think there's any chance that we get a deal done with the commercial bondholders around that time. But you get the sense that's what, the IMF will probably tie the next release and the next review to those things.
Again, do you foresee China or any of the external creditors making new demands during the final stages of the negotiations? And what could be the impact of that? Bear in mind how difficult it was for us to get the second tranche.
I think my understanding is that in principle, we have an agreement. We have a broad frame agreement. So it's just filling in the details. Of course, there can always be devils in the detail, but once we have a broader framework agreed, you expect that part of the process will proceed relatively more smoothly.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Dr. Patrick Esumeh, for your time here on Business Live. We are indeed grateful for your time. It is important as well to explore the impact of this on the Forex. And as you rightly heard Dr. Esumeh saying that indeed it will have an immediate impact on the Forex. Let's get on that bit and join research lead for GCB Capital, Courage Buti, to help us explore that angle as well. Courage, thanks so much for joining me on Business Live. Will I be too hesitant to say that the Bank of Ghana's international reserves have seen some significant increase after more than $600 million was credited to its account yesterday by the IMF, plus the $300 million the World Bank support program hit its account as well?
Well, if you stretch it back a bit to late December, the 800 million from Cocoa Board, we could be talking about $2 billion thereabout in cushion for the reserve in the last 1.5 or so months. Positive, I must say. The expectation was for us to end the year with just 0.8 months of import cover. It's looking like 1.5, and these inflows could really cushion it to near 2.5 thereabout. We expect the numbers, I think, on Friday when the Bank of Ghana release a summary of economic and financial data, really. So that is a cushion. Is it supposed to lead to some sharp correction in the city? I don't think so. I don't expect so. So far this year, relative stability compared to what we've seen in January 2023. Yes, and it's largely because of some of these inflows that are priced into expectations on the market. So it will be more of a stable performance, maybe through quarter one, bearing in mind the seasonality pressures we are accustomed to in quarter one, but nothing extreme like we've seen in 2021 or even 2023 and 2022.
All right, so you are saying that the inflows we are witnessing or receiving basically would sustain the growth, the stability we are seeing now, right?
Well, definitely. The reason is this. The CD is fundamentally weak, that we know. In fact, the performance as it is now is even, I think, stronger than what the fundamentals suggest, right? If you have your reserves at some point falling to 0.8, 0.5 months of import, that's a serious situation. And ordinarily, the CD's correction from some 16 cities, 15 cities to now the generally 12 area wasn't one motivated by strong fundamentals. It was really the IMF backstop that gave that confidence to the market, really. And I don't see why there should be a sharp correction at this point when the reserve vulnerabilities are very much there. We are one shock or two away from another crisis and in the currency market, really. And that is how fragile things are. So these inflows really just come to support the level of stability we have in my best analysis, really. They just come to support the current levels we have. And I don't expect corrections to the levels where we could get to maybe 11, 10. No, I don't expect that. If there will be movement, it will be around the current rate. And indeed, you are seeing that even post the announcement of the 600 million inflow and everything else happening, you are seeing some movement from about 12.2, 12.15, 12.2 to now 12.3, 12.4 on the market. So yeah, I think generally that is what things are looking like, a sense of relative stability around current levels rather than very sharp appreciations.
And again, Courage, you would agree with me that we've got to maintain or sustain this stability. What more should the Bank of Ghana do to maintain that trajectory?
Well, it's more of the reforms. We've been doing a few reforms here and there. You have to control the CD liquidity levels on the market. We've seen a switch from keeping reserves, CR in dollars to now just cedis. All of these are ways to mop up CD liquidity from the system and release some FX so that there will be a bit more liquidity on the market. Because as it stands, portfolio investors are not coming in with flows. They are not just open to the Ghanaian market. So a trade finance, export receipt at Bank of Ghana's interventions and things like that. Those are the sources of flow to the market and what the banks are providing from, if you like, repatriations and Ghanaians abroad sending something home and all of that. Those are the sources of flow now, and not a lot on the portfolio market and the capital market in general. And so really, they just have to sustain the reforms, the confidence, manage the liquidity situation, and of course on the fiscal side as well. The reforms and the extent of the gains we've made is the reason I believe that we have the first review completed now. We have to sustain that and sustain the outlook. That is how we can win back market confidence. All right. And so those things, do a lot of those going forward. And the election risk is real. We need to show the market that we can be disciplined. And if we do that, we will be winning back the confidence. Those are the ways the city can remain stable.
Very well. Thank you very much, Research Lead, GCB Capital, Courage Buti. We're indeed grateful for your time. You're still watching Business Live. More after this break. Before we go, former Finance Minister Dr. Kwabena Duffuor is cautioning the government against what he describes as excessive taxation. He says instead of increasing taxes, the government should rather build a robust and efficient tax system that has the capacity to generate enough domestic revenue to cushion the Ghanaian economy. He believes building a strong tax regime should be the focus of the current New Patriotic Party government, rather than introducing taxes that could affect the growth of businesses and overburden Ghanaians. Ohimeng Tewia has more.
Dr. Duffuor was speaking to David Akwete on Love in the Morning, on Love 99.5 FM, ahead of the NDC's 24-hour economy walk in Kumasi on Wednesday. He said the government's taxation program should be measured by what he described as tax incidence to assess the impact of taxes on those paying. The government, as of 2024, has introduced at least 27 tax components, a situation businesses say has the tendency to cripple growth. Organized labor has criticized the government for levying 15% VAT on electricity consumption, as it called for the abolition of the new tax. The former governor of the Bank of Ghana will not describe the government's proposed 15% VAT on electricity consumption as a nuisance tax, but he insists excessive taxation, especially nuisance taxes, should not be encouraged.
efficient tax system.
Efficient, okay.
Not any tax. Efficient tax system. That will generate domestic revenue growth. It's what you should look at. You should make sure that you build a tax capacity that will give you good revenue. We have something called tax incidence. If you are taxing people, you look at what will this tax do to the well-paying. Next year, will the person be able to pay more or still be in a good business? If by taxing the person, the company is going to go down, and next year he'll be worse off. It's not a good tax.
It's not a good tax?
No.
So would you refer to this one as, like someone referred to, would you call this one a nuisance tax, for example? This 15%
I'm talking we should not.
on electricity?
The nuisance tax should not be encouraged.
Will you describe this one as a nuisance tax?
Which one?
The VAT 50% electricity consumption.
I'll have to look at it.
From Kumasi for Joy Business, Ohimi Interior reporting.
Thanks so much for watching Business Live. I am Pius Kojo Bakar.